welcome back to another episode of the Whiskey Diaries. My name is Martin Lang and today we're going to be talking about the special edition of Kilchoman Fino Sherry Cask. Now before we dive into the whiskey, just a little bit of history on Kilchoman. We have done a few videos, but just to, if you haven't seen them, just to refresh you a little bit. Kilchoman was created in 2005 and was the newest distillery after 100 years of no new distilleries in Ireland. The particular part about Kilchoman is that it's the only distillery in inland in Ireland. Most of the other distilleries, or actually all of the other distilleries like Lagavulin, Freud, Ardbeg, Brookladdick and so on, they're all in the coast. They actually get beaten up by the ocean. They're like literally right there, including Bowmore as well. Kilchoman, on the other hand, is about 5 to 10 kilometers away from the beach, actually facing Mica Bay. Mica Bay is one of the most stunning beaches in Ireland. And the distillery itself is actually on a farm. They produce their own barley, they have sheep running around and so on and so on. The distillery is absolutely tiny. At least when I went there in 2014, it was. Now Kilchoman, 6 years later, almost 7 years later, is actually quite more popular and they produce a lot more whiskey. So I'm assuming they went through some extensions and stuff. But when I was there, it was literally like a mom and pop shop. Like it was two stills, everybody doing everything by hand, including the malting, the bottling, everything. They do everything on site. It is actually really impressive, the quality of whiskey that they do. The first whiskey that they released was in 2009 and it was just a 3-year-old. Since then, all the whiskies that they produce is no age statement, and it's a blend between 3, 4, and 5 years. Some are depending on the release, some a little bit older, some a little bit younger. But they do a lot of mix between different types of sherry and different types of oak. So most of the times, like for instance, the Saneg is, like we said before, is 50-50 Oloroso and American oak. Then you've got something like Mica Bay, they use it only 8 months of on a Oloroso sherry butt. And then it brings us to the Fino Sherry mature cask. Now, Kilchoman has been very famous for releasing a lot of individual casks and a lot of individual and special reserves. So you got like the STR, you got rum cask, you got 100% Islay, you got all sorts of stuff that they experiment with. This Fino Sherry has been matured 100% in Fino Sherry casks. Just so you know, if you don't know what Fino is a style of sherry that has a very particular way of fermenting. During fermentation, a type of yeast that is called flor floats on the top of the barrels and creates something that is kind of like covers the whole wine. It's kind of like a little thick white layer of yeast. Back in the 1900s, they believed that was a bad thing. They didn't know what it was actually doing. But then after a lot of experimentation, they find out that this layer of flor that stays on top of the wine while it's fermenting, it actually protects the wine from over oxidizing. So instead of starting to become like an Oloroso sherry or something like a little bit more tannic, it creates a wine that is really pale and really fresh, and it's supposed to be drinking cold, and it's like wine. Like most sherries, because of the content of sugar and the content of alcohol, you can leave them on the shelf or you can put it in the fridge and it's fine. Fino Sherry, on the other hand, you have to drink it straight away. So, and it's delicious with oysters or with jamon or anything that is fatty as well, because the Fino Sherry actually is quite bone dry, so it cuts through all the fats. So it's also quite nutty. Like one of the first flavors that you get from Fino Sherry is basically like nuts. So what does this to the whiskey is create a very interesting flavor profile. So you get the savory notes from the Fino, and then you get the saltiness and the peatiness coming from the whiskey itself. So I personally haven't tried this one just yet, so we're going to try it with you guys. The ABV is the same as Kilchoman, 46% ABV. The Fino Bodega that they use is called Miguel Martin Bodega. That is just basically, Bodega means winery, basically in Spanish. And they gave Kilchoman 11 casks. 10 of them were of 100% brand new Fino Sherry seasoned. And then one more they did of a refill of Fino Sherry. Just to a little bit of explanation, if you don't know what refill means and what it does to the barrel is, if it's fresh and all they had in that barrel is Fino and they didn't refill it with anything else, it means that it's just going to give a lot of aromas and a lot of freshness, because the oak is brand new, so they put the sherry in there and the oak will absorb everything. If it's a refill, it means that the oak in itself has basically refilled twice. So the second time the sherry goes in there, they're basically, they doesn't have as much flavor to give into the whiskey, so it's just a little bit lighter. So basically, American oak refill, when you say that, it means that, let's, for an example, if there was like a brand new whiskey in a brand new American oak, the whiskey is going to come out with a lot of vanilla, a lot of toffee, a lot of flavors that come from American oak. Now, when you take that whiskey and you add brand new whiskey in it, all those flavors are going to be basically being almost exhausted. So it's just going to give it a more subtle, not as many flavors coming through, not as strong. Which is good to have those sort of options, because when you're doing buttered whiskey or blended whiskies like this one's like Norwich Statements, it's good to have something to balance things out and not having something that slaps you in the face. Anyway, besides that, going back to the whiskey itself, 46% ABV, like I always say, is that sweet spot. They only done 10,500 bottles, so it's a limited release. This is the 2020 edition, and then as Kilchoman has been doing, they've been putting the flavor, the tasting notes on the back of the label, which I think is great. So in this one, for instance, as I always say, tasting is very subjective, so the tasting notes give you an idea of what the sherry can do to the whiskey, but you should form your own opinions like everybody else. In this particular nose, you get peat smoke and ripe bananas, like a sweetness and a hint of nuttiness. The nuttiness, as I said before, comes from the Fino, and then on the palate you actually get tropical fruit, and then like earthy peat smoke with chocolate and zesty lemon. Now, with Kilchoman, we have been noticing that they're actually quite citrusy on the back palate. That's because of the young spirit that they use, and most of the times the whiskey are under 10-year-old. That's my personal opinion. I might be wrong, but basically the Maki Bay and the Seneg, they both have like a little, like quite a fresh lemon citrus at the back palate. So I'm expecting to see this again. The nose is a very, very Kilchoman whiskey. It's delicious, but it does have that extra nuttiness on the nose. Like, it's really important. Like, if you never had tried Fino Sherry, for you to understand this whiskey more in particular, I would really recommend. They're only like $20, $25 if you buy them on Dan Murphy's or in a bottle shop, and it's really interesting to see if you have Fino Sherry by itself and then you have the whiskey, and you'll see the similarities. Wow, that is incredible. It is. You get the smokiness and you get that tannics from sherry, but at the same time, at the end, it's like nutty, zesty back palate. It's really, really incredible. Very unique whiskey. Definitely worth having if you can find it. And at 10,000 bottles, I think that's going to run out pretty quick. In this particular edition, I will probably get 2 bottles, one to drink and one to keep. That's usually the recommendation, but if you can only get one, just definitely get one to try. Anyway, guys, thank you very much for listening. Slanjaba.